François. 7 years of CIVIS history in 7 minutes. It's not so good. A presidential no, CIVISness no. You are the best way for us. Please, the floor is yours, dear François. François, Université Libre de Bruxelles, and coordinator of the working package communication. Thank you.
I hope your attention capacity is not entirely exhausted. That would be a shame. You will need it. Whenever I'm asked what the European Universities Initiative is about, my first answer is always some variation of this. Universities are encouraged to constitute long-term alliances whereby they will become more efficient at collaborating as their systemic, strategic, operational, and overall transformational integration deepens. By purpose and by nature, alliances are expected to progress towards deeper integration to achieve better efficiency in their collaborative undertakings. It is their raison d'être. One of the simplest ways to model the process is to resort to cybernetics loop. You all know the cybernetics loop, even if you don't know about it. The alliances plan, prepare, and execute activities. These activities produce results, and then these results and any lesson learned along the way are fed back into the preparation of the next batch of activities. The results of the activities are simultaneously the materialization, but also the support and the build-up of an efficient collaboration. Cycling through that loop repeatedly for months and for years as we have, the Alliance accumulates a growing body of experience, knowledge, and tools, but also processes, all of which constitute the necessary support to increase the efficiency of the consortium. The accumulation is incremental and iterative. Each call, each project, each academic year brings its contribution of learning points, empirical verification, and pragmatic solutions. We can actually make a phony graph about this. If we plot collaborative efficiency as a function of time, we are expecting that the efficiency will increase. We are seeking to increase the efficiency of our joint and collaborative activities. And if all goes well, the expanding collection of supporting resources increases that efficiency in diverse forms of collaboration among the member universities. It translates into improved performance when seeking synergies among the member universities. My guess would be CIVIS is about here, but I can't prove it. The increasing quantity and quality of the support provided by the Alliance is what drives the efficiency up. It's like hydroelectric power. You need to fill the dam first with enough water to start operating the turbines. But once that process is launched, then the flow of energy will be steady. And we've reached this point where there's enough water in the dam and the Alliance is producing energy. Eventually, collaborative efficiency will plateau. You've seen my graph plateaus at some point, although I didn't set any dates on the graph. But that doesn't mean that the job will be done when we reach that plateau, because the high amount of support requires a lot of resources, both to be operated, but also to be maintained, the context is evolving quickly, and we need to adapt permanently to that evolution of the context. But after years of such virtuous cycles, results accumulate. And there might be a point where the process is at risk of jamming, as the quantity and complexity of the output impedes our capacity to use it reliably and efficiently. Mitigating that risk requires a more detailed analysis of what constitutes concretely these forms of support. The supporting resources are above all the skills and competencies of our staff. But it's also the experience of our communities, the specialized knowledge we accumulate, the processes we organize, the capacities we mobilize, and the shared infrastructure that we set up and maintain. These 6 largely arbitrary categories that I'm using can be ranked on a scale from the most material to the most immaterial, even if there are many immaterial dimensions that can be documented and that can be compiled and summarized. I'll still consider them largely immaterial. Such a ranking is useful to help us identify which of these resources are most volatile and therefore most at risk of being inaccessible or damaged or even lost along the way. A large portion of these substantive assets, the supporting capital of our alliance, is vulnerable. We need to acknowledge this. A lot of our assets are vulnerable. I'd like to mention one particularly significant contributor to the vulnerability, and that's what I call the turnover. Why is turnover such an important source of concern? Because the most natural, convenient, and efficient way to access any of these assets is the human interface. We all prefer, by far, asking someone, reaching out to officers and units holding relevant specialist roles in the alliance, rather than look into the infamous CIVIS box. This is both convenient and efficient as long as the said specialists have the capacities required to become involved and to contribute. And experience shows that they are usually over-solicited. But relying on the individual's knowledge and experience also makes us even more vulnerable to the inevitable turnover in staff and roles. CIVIS Alliance, like any organization, relies massively on the many people involved in its activities. Therefore, the turnover among our community constitutes a major risk, given the prominent importance of the skills, experience, and knowledge embodied by each of the people involved. To paraphrase, it's the second time today you hear a paraphrase of a so-called African proverb. Each time an active member of the CIVIS community goes away, an entire library burns. Each time a member of a support unit, a member of a council or an expert group, each time a member of the steering committee or the coordination team or the board of directors moves on, CIVIS risks losing precious parcels of what is called the process knowledge, a wealth of invaluable skills and knowledge that are practically impossible to store and pass on to their successor. In the case of an alliance of universities like CIVIS, the turnover mechanism is especially complex as it takes place at different paces for different roles. There are at least 3 distinct turnover paces. If, again, you look at it through time, from the slowest to the fastest, first you have what I call the specialized staff. They can be specialized staff at the universities, they can be specialized staff specifically from the Alliance, but these people usually have a career and the pace of turnover is rather slow. They will be with us for many years and we can rely on them for those many years. Which is not exactly the same as for the governance bodies. By statutes and by tradition, all of our universities have rules and processes by which the governance turns over at a certain pace, usually a few years. and with the heads of institutions, usually their team. So many leaders moving on and going away with a parcel of the memory of the Alliance. And then, of course, the quickest pace of turnover is with students. And that's a good thing, obviously. Every year, given the scale of this Alliance, 500,000 students, every year, thousands of students are graduating and leaving their university. And thousands of new students join in. That's the fastest pace of turnover. So as we go along year after year, if we want to manage and limit the damage of this turnover, we need to acknowledge and take into account these varying paces of turnover. Now, going back to the accumulated results, to the assets of efficiency that I mentioned earlier, to the true capital of the Alliance, we must look closer at what forms they can take before we can even think about a strategy to preserve them. What exactly are we trying to retain? Well, they take many forms. Again, this is just a random list, and we could make such a longer list, but we have all kinds of documents. We have statutes, bylaws, agreements, memorandum of understandings, terms of reference of various bodies. We have procedures, guidelines, templates, handbooks, minutes of meetings, dozens, hundreds, thousands by now of documents that we keep and we accumulate. And they are these assets, or at least our assets, are somewhere into that body of documents. A lot of these items, I would say, could just be archived. Some of them actually probably also discarded. But some must absolutely be set aside, preserved, and most importantly, made available to the community. They are the tools and the building blocks of interinstitutional, transnational, deep cooperation. To cluster and designate these scattered elements that I just listed here, I suggest we must use a name. We must define a category for these documents, and I suggest we call them protocol. If you look at the exact meaning of the word protocol, it actually kind of sums it up. All these things are about protocol. And if it's the protocol of CIVIS, then it's the CIVIS protocol. These assets are the most treasured values of the Alliance. They are the Alliance estate. They are our capital if we were a company. But the assets of an academic alliance cannot be limited to protocol, no matter how rich that protocol is. It would confine the ambition of the alliance to something rather bureaucratic. A university alliance is much more than a bureaucratic project. It is a holistic endeavor that roots itself deep inside the member and partner institutions, their culture and their identity. It is above all a human experience. And along those lines, there's a whole segment of what makes an alliance what it is that is utterly ephemeral, transitional, and that is mostly overlooked as a result. Fundamental but vanishing elements of the making of an alliance that are neglected and could be lost irreparably. The very soul of the alliance is made of all the complex real-world human experience. Again, a few post-it notes as examples. There has been negotiations along the process. There's been specific actions. There's been people with specific characteristics or ideas. There's been anecdotes. There's been failures. There's been stories. There's been gossip even. There's been elements of context. There's been specific events. There's been some crisis. There's been some epiphanies. There's even been a lot of backroom drama that is relevant to understand where we come from and what we are today. These bits define our organizational culture. They define our approach to deep collaboration. They define our mood, our color, our spirit, our pathos, our vibe, our civisness, as we like to call it. They define this little je ne sais quoi that is unique to our alliance and different from others. Again, I suggest to name this second strand of supporting assets, using, in this case, you might disagree, I'd like to use a German term, which, like every good German term, is difficult to translate. That's how we recognize the good German terms. I think all these second set of assets could be called the Geist. I've seen German colleagues in the room. You'll talk to me at coffee break if I've abused Geist. But I think we could call it the CIVIS Geist. The CIVIS Geist, too, is part of our treasured assets. It is part also, just like the other I mentioned before, part of the Alliance capital. Therefore, I suggest to conceive this, what I call the CIVIS assets, all these elements that support our activities, as divided into two strands, the CIVIS protocol and the CIVIS Geist. And this is why, when I want to suggest a strategy to manage these assets and to preserve them and make them available when we need them, I contend that we need not just one retention strategy, but a double retention strategy. Let's try to explore briefly what that double strategy might look like. Let's start with the CIVIS protocol. The CIVIS protocol requires that we have, and of course we do have that, but we have to keep on working to improve it and maintain it. We need to have a structured reference collection, I call them, which is a streamlined, accessible, ranked, and structured reference collection. By ranked, I mean distinguishing the strictly operational documents from the more detailed and contextualized ones. We need to find a way to make the most relevant document rise to the surface in a format which can be navigated by the community and that can be accessed and used by those who need it. Second, we need a continuous updating procedure. It's amazing how in just a few years things can become obsolete and needs updating. It's a huge work and it needs to be organized to update those documents so that when you look for something, you find the most updated version and not one which has been replaced elsewhere by a more recent version. We need to have a comprehensive onboarding protocol. Every time someone joins CIVIS, be it in one of the universities or be it at the level of the coordination, it's up to them to do their best to understand where they fall and what's expected of them. We could be more systematic about it and have what many organizations do, which is an onboarding process by which someone joining the organization is going through a process, a multiple-step process that will lead that person to understand in a structured, systematic way what we're trying to do, what has happened before, and what we plan to do in the future. We also need to have an efficient archiving system. It may seem obvious, but by that I mean a system by which documents and all forms of traces of those assets can trickle down into categories of different nature and different relevance so that, again, we can make the best of them. The good news is that most of these is either implemented or planned, but that doesn't mean it doesn't require constant attention and energy. This is fundamental so that the results of what we do is building up an alliance and not just a succession of projects. Moving on to the CIVIS Geist, I told you this is the overlooked part of it. So most of what I'm going to suggest remains largely to be done. And you can disagree as to whether this is even necessary. I think we need meaningful storytelling about the building of the alliance. And I mean that in the most contemporary meaning of the word. we need to tell the story of CIVIS, not so much to make a nice video on the website or to impress anyone from the outside world. I'm saying in terms of, again, encompassing and sharing the human experience of this alliance in its many dimensions and in its many activities. The storytelling is hugely important because it is the good complement to the more, I hate to use that word and I've used it twice already, the more bureaucratic part of the alliance, which is absolutely essential, but which needs this complement of a living story, a storytelling. Second, we need, and that's something which is ongoing with the communications unit, we need what I call assorted testimonies. When we started doing that a few years ago, the first videos of just asking students taking part to an activity and professors taking part to other activities to just, tell us how it's going. And the words of these people were so moving, so rich, so conclusive as to the importance of what we were doing that we immediately felt this is something to be done more systematically. Again, this is all about human experience. We're not sending a spaceship outside of the solar system. We are working on human beings, transmitting knowledge, doing research, exchanging among cultures. This is all about human experience. And the testimonies help us record that, share that, and build up to move on to more ambitious approaches afterwards. We need also a human experience chronicling. By chronicling, I mean a more systematic recording of some of these events. We have minutes of meetings, which is a very formal way to record decisions and sometimes discussions, but the human experience needs a more rich chronicling, like you would do for all the big events in a particular society. And we can and should be much more systematic about that as well. And then I think we need to set up some sort of rigorous oral history project around CIVIS. I mean, 7 years is becoming long enough that we can actually approach this as historians and use all the tools and all the tricks of historians to make the best of that trajectory, and not just to remember what was, but to better prepare for what will be. Regarding this last element, today I'm announcing a pilot project initiated and conducted by ULB, a modest pilot project, but something which might lead to something more significant. And we will call it CIVIS Story. And you understand, you hear in CIVIS Story both history and story. This is all about chronicling the birth and rise of CIVIS Alliance. It's a subtitle that we propose. It's something which will be, step by step, and we're just starting to work on the first step. The first step will be topical interviews. Historians call that topical interviews of the pioneers of CIVIS. We mentioned some of them earlier today. The rectors, we call them the founding rectors. Most of them, except for our host tonight actually, have moved on to other functions, or some of them have even retired. But they have so much to tell us about these years, these months of coming up with the idea and the enthusiasm and the concerns, and what worked, what didn't work, what were they dreaming back then, and what has become of that dream today. So the first phase will be to go and talk to the pioneers, the early actors of CIVIS, to just, again, collect in a structured way and save what initially started all this. Later, we hope we could then manage interviews of current key actors, the people who make CIVIS run on a daily basis, and determine with them the key legacy, the key achievements of the alliance, but also see with them what should be retained of what CIVIS has done. These key actors of today are the best guides for the retention strategy. They know better than anyone what is worth retaining and what is worth disposing of or archiving somewhere for later use. And then lastly, we should probably establish a more systematic collection of key documents. I'm not just talking about a folder on a shared drive. I'm talking about a digital collection of key documents in different formats. They could be videos and audio recordings as well as written documents, signed agreements, Magna Carta documents related and events and things like that. Key moments that are documented and that would be assembled in a collection of key documents. I think that, like all important journeys, ours needs its logbook. And what we're basically offering is to start even reverse engineering the logbook of the CIVIS journey. If you allow me an ultimate metaphor for today, I'd like to compare our alliance to a tree. I know, you're disappointed. Usually I come up with better or more original metaphors than this. It's a mundane metaphor, but I think it's remarkably fit to try to understand my point. In this metaphor, the trunk of the tree represents our assets, the ones I described earlier, all the skills and knowledge we have laboriously acquired. That would be the trunk of the tree. Now wait, if that's the trunk of the tree, then we may need a different tree. I think this is more fitting to the CIVIS tree. To grow and thrive, the trunk needs a strong set of roots. Any biologist would tell you that, any gardener would tell you that as well. And those roots, again, would be our Geist. A strong trunk and healthy roots will allow the branches above to grow. Many will grow towards the sky, searching for light. Branches and leaves will move and bend with the wind. Some will break, some will dry out. But overall, the tree will grow bigger, stronger, and nicer. It will provide shade, oxygen, nutriments. It will protect our biodiversity. It will serve all kinds of purposes. And there's something I've heard from one of the leading experts in plants in the world. That is the head of gardeners of Versailles in Paris. He once told, with proper care, some say a healthy tree can live forever. Thank you.
The worst part of a rector's or president's job is to give introductory or welcome speeches. The good part, the positive one, is that you can get the floor whenever you want. So I talked to Romniță. I just want to express my sincere appreciation to François and to this presentation as the rector, CIVIS member, but also as a sociologist, and to say that University of Bucharest will join to your project and will start doing our part and of course working together for what you proposed. Thank you very much indeed, François.
Last part of my mission, it's the music. I would like to introduce a very nice moment of music, a very nice piece of music. We'll surprise you with many, many different kind of music during these days. But I have the pleasure to introduce to you a fantastic cooperation with the University of Music and National University of Music in Romania, a partner of In Tune Alliance, which is fantastic to have cooperation with an alliance. And I have the pleasure to kindly ask the Vice Rector of the University of National Music in Bucharest, Professor Heinderyckx, just to present you the specificity and what it's very interesting to share with you related to this musical piece. Professor Heinderyckx, if you like to come into the stage, that's extraordinary experience, a musical one, but not only a musical one. It will be fantastic to see that it's an old music. It's called Dimitrie Cantemir, Early Music Ensemble, and we'll have the pleasure to welcome Professor Heinderyckx. I'm just looking to a musician. Where it is, Professor Heinderyckx comes to us. No authority, as you are seeing. I'm just guiding CIVIS here. Was fantastic when I'm coming to the musicians, no authority to do something special. It's fantastic, no musicians, no, it's great. François, if I may, until this moment, we are expecting, honestly, to see pictures, yes, or a movie, 7 years about CIVIS. A movie, a picture, and François told us, I will surprise you with something special. And our sociologist here made the analysis and just proposed something which was very interesting for this perspective of having CIVIS in a way analyzed and of course introduced in a very analytical, philosophical and humanistic perspective, which is fantastic. Somebody from the room, from the audience was made this very interesting idea. It was something special coming from a humanitarian perspective. Now, in this afternoon, immediately after the break, we'll have the round table. This will be managed and moderated better than me. Our presidential advisor will change the role, and it's becoming our moderator for the roundtable on the diplomacy, related to diplomacy, academic development, Europeanization, everything which is linked to the European alliances. Please, somebody else needs to signalize if the musicians are coming, and Mr. Vice Rector is just joining us for presenting this moment as well. And the roundtable will be dedicated to what's happening in this moment, not necessarily in Brussels, but of course what's happening in this context of development of new European university alliances. Just a very short notice about the history. In the room also it's Luciano Sasso, and I would like to mention this name because when CIVIS has been created, we have the Secretary General and the President of UNICA. We should recognize or acknowledge for the history that the member of the university alliances which are becoming part of the CIVIS are coming from the beginning, from the capital of the European institutions of higher education. And it was fantastic to see. Thank you very much as well, UNICA. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Luciano, thank you for your efforts during the history for making this reality created and happens. Thanks a lot. Mr. Vice Rector, it's fantastic. Come with me now. It's a very good friend of the University of Bucharest. The floor is yours, and of course, the stage is yours as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Good afternoon. My name is Heinderyckx. I'm Professor and Vice Rector for Research and International Affairs at the National University of Music in Bucharest. Before my colleagues and students had a chance to set up their instruments, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon excellent concert, I hope, on behalf of my university and the musicians you are about to hear. In the next 15 minutes, we invite you to travel with us to the soundscape of 18th and early 19th centuries, a fascinating period when Romanian principalities stood at the crossroads of cultures, empires, and musical traditions here in this part of Europe. The ensemble performing this afternoon bears the name of Dimitrie Cantemir, one of the most remarkable intellectual figures of his age, a prince, historian, philosopher, and of course musician. Cantemir embodied the vibrant cultural exchanges that connecting the princely courts of Bucharest and Iași with Constantinople or Istanbul in those times, the Balkans, Europe, and the wider Eastern Mediterranean world. The musicians you will hear in the next minutes are students and alumni of the National University of Music Bucharest, united by a common passion for musical research, interest and scholarship, and of course artistic exploration. The ensemble was founded as an artistic and research initiative by our colleague and dear friend, Professor Cătălin Cernătescu, whose vision and Cătălin, whose vision and commitment to the revival of historical repertoires have made the project possible. Cătălin will conduct the first two pieces on the program, and I will conduct the rest. The music we present in this afternoon once resonated in the princely courts, aristocratic saloons, and urban gatherings throughout the Romanian principalities, the Balkan, and of course Istanbul. It belongs to a rich and cosmopolitan world in which Romanian, Greek, Ottoman, and Balkan traditions met, interacted, and inspired one another. The pieces you will hear have been recovered from historical manuscripts preserved in Romanian collections and written in Byzantine musical notation. Through careful musicological research and principle of historical informed performance, these forgotten melodies have been brought back to life, allowing us to hear once again sounds that have remained silent for nearly 2 centuries. These compositions are more than musical works. Actually, they are echoes of a shared cultural heritage, witness to a world in which musicians, ideas, languages, and artistic practices traveled freely across borders and traditions. As you listen, we invite you to imagine the Oriental and Levantine atmosphere of the late 18th century Bucharest, Iași, and Fanariot, Constantinople. Brightly lit halls, princely residences, festive gatherings, and musicians whose art brought together diverse people and cultures through the universal language of music. Dear friends, thank you very much for joining us in this afternoon, and I wish you a wonderful musical journey. Thank you.
was fantastic performance. Thank you so much, Professor Heinderyckx. Thank you. And also, Evelyn, where you are.
You're great because here's another rehearsal within University.
Thank you very much. And now it's a well-deserved break for 15-20 minutes because I'm just getting another possible meeting for the next co-chair or the chair for the table round. Thank you very much.